In January 1921, a loaf of bread in Germany cost 0.29 marks. By November 1923, just 34 months later, that same loaf of bread cost 200 billion marks. Not 200,000, not 200 million, 200 billion. A wheelbarrow full of cash could not buy a single newspaper. Workers were paid twice a day because by lunchtime the morning's wages had already lost half their value. People burned currency in their fireplaces because it was cheaper than buying firewood with it. The entire life savings of an entire generation, doctors, teachers, factory workers, retired soldiers, were wiped out completely, not in a crash, not in a war, by a printing press. And it didn't start with hyperinflation. It started with a government that had too much debt and one very tempting solution. Here's why this matters right now. America's national debt is $36 trillion. The Federal Reserve has expanded its balance sheet from $900 billion in 2008 to $8 trillion today. Washington is spending $2 trillion more every year than it collects in taxes. And the word you will never hear any American politicians say out loud is the same word German politicians avoided in 1921, until it was too late to stop what came next. Stay with me. To understand what happened in Germany, you need to understand what Germany faced after World War I. The war had lasted 4 years and cost Germany everything. 2 million soldiers dead. The economy shattered. Industrial production at a fraction of its pre-war levels. And then, in 1919, the Treaty of Versailles handed Germany a bill that was almost incomprehensible in scale. 132 billion gold marks in war reparations, roughly equivalent to the entire German GDP for several years, to be paid to France, Britain, and the Allied powers. Germany had not just lost the war. It had been handed a financial sentence that its economy had no realistic mechanism to pay. The government faced an impossible arithmetic. Revenue was collapsing, obligations were exploding, and there was one tool available that required no parliamentary debate, no international approval, and no immediate visible consequence: the printing press. The German government began financing its deficits by having the Reichsbank, Germany's central bank, print marks and use them to buy government bonds. This is the mechanism. The government spends more than it collects. Rather than raise taxes or cut spending, both politically devastating, it instructs the central bank to create new money and lend it to the government. The government gets to spend. The central bank's balance sheet expands, and the cost is invisible. At first, every new mark printed dilutes the value of every mark already in existence. But the dilution is slow enough in the beginning that most people don't notice. Prices rise a little, people grumble. The government points to the reparations burden, to foreign speculation, to enemies of Germany, to anything except the printing press running in the basement of the Reichsbank. In 1921, German inflation was high but manageable, around 140% annually, painful, but the economy was functioning. Then, in January 1923, France and Belgium occupied the Ruhr, Germany's industrial heartland, because Germany had missed reparations payments. The German government's response was to call for passive resistance. German workers in the Ruhr would go on strike and refuse to cooperate with the occupiers. The government would continue paying their wages. But with the Ruhr occupied and production stopped, Germany's industrial output collapsed further. And the government had committed to paying hundreds of thousands of striking workers with money it did not have. The solution was the same solution it had used since 1919, just applied at a scale that crossed the threshold from inflation into something that had no historical precedent. The Reichsbank printed, and printed, and printed. Between January and November 1923, the money supply increased by a factor of 7.3 million. Prices doubled every 4 days. By October 1923, the exchange rate hit 4.2 trillion marks to $1 US, 4.2 trillion. The mark had become so worthless that workers demanded to be paid in the middle of the day so they could spend their wages before the afternoon price increases erased their value. Shops stopped displaying prices because the price on the label was wrong by the time a customer reached the checkout. Restaurant menus were printed without prices because the cost of a meal changed between ordering and eating. The economy did not slow down. It did not contract normally. It disintegrated. The price system, the fundamental mechanism through which a market economy allocates resources, stopped working entirely. The human cost went far beyond economic statistics. The middle class was annihilated. A retired schoolteacher who had saved diligently for 40 years and held her savings in marks lost everything. Not to a bad investment, not to fraud, but to her own government's decision to print. A landlord whose tenant paid rent in marks received payment that was worthless by the time it arrived. Anyone on a fixed income, pensioners, bondholders, anyone who had trusted the German state's promise to honor its obligations, was destroyed. The people who survived financially were those with hard assets: land, foreign currency, physical gold, factories. The people who were destroyed were those who had trusted paper. And the political consequences of that destruction did not stay economic. A generation of Germans who had played by the rules, saved diligently, trusted institutions, and lost everything became the audience for a different kind of political message. The hyperinflation of 1923 did not directly cause what came in 1933, but it created the precondition, a middle class that had been financially annihilated and was ready to listen to anyone who promised to punish the people responsible. Now here's the question you should be sitting with, because the mechanism that destroyed Germany in 1923 and the mechanism America has been operating since 2008 are not identical, but they share the same foundational logic. Germany's government had debt it could not pay through taxation. It instructed its central bank to create money and use it to finance government spending. The result was the destruction of the currency's purchasing power. America's government has $36 trillion in debt, growing at $2 trillion annually. Since 2008, the Federal Reserve has created trillions in new dollars through quantitative easing, buying government bonds with money that did not exist before the transaction. The dollar has lost 93% of its purchasing power since 1971. The mechanism is more sophisticated. The timeline is longer. The mathematics of what happens when a government consistently spends more than it collects and finances the difference by expanding the money supply. That mathematics does not change because the country running it is more powerful. The difference between Germany in 1921 and America today is not the mechanism. It is the scale of the advantage America possesses. The dollar is the global reserve currency. When America prints dollars, the inflation is partially exported, absorbed by every country in the world that holds dollar reserves, that prices oil in dollars, that uses dollars to settle international trade. Germany in 1921 had no such advantage. Its printing destroyed only Germans. America's printing is distributed across the entire global financial system. This is a real and significant advantage. It buys time. It bought time from 1971 to 2008. It bought time from 2008 to today. But it does not eliminate the arithmetic. It postpones it. And every year the debt grows by $2 trillion as the postponement becomes more expensive and the eventual adjustment becomes more severe. There is one more parallel that history does not forgive. Germany's hyperinflation ended in November 1923 when the government introduced the Rentenmark, a new currency backed by land and industrial assets, issued in strictly limited quantities, replacing the worthless mark at a rate of 1 trillion to 1. The hyperinflation was stopped, but it was stopped only after it had already destroyed the savings of an entire generation. The Rentenmark saved the economy. It did not give back what had been taken. The families, who had lost everything in the inflation, did not get their savings back when the new currency arrived. Stabilization ended the catastrophe. It did not reverse it. This is the lesson every government that has ever run a printing press has eventually learned. You can stop the inflation, but you cannot undo what it already took. The question America faces is not whether the current trajectory is sustainable. It is not. The question is whether the adjustment happens through deliberate policy, spending cuts, real fiscal discipline, honest acknowledgement of the debt scale, or whether it happens the way it happened in Germany, not through choice, through arithmetic. If this changed how you see inflation, the Federal Reserve, and what money printing actually means for your savings, subscribe, because I'm tracking the exact mechanisms that connect what Germany did to the mark in 1921 to what America has been doing to the dollar since 2008. Hit that like button if Weimar just made quantitative easing look completely different, and drop a comment. Do you think America's reserve currency status buys enough time to fix the debt before the arithmetic takes over? Or is $36 trillion already Germany in January 1923, past the point where the outcome can be changed? Because Germany had economists who understood exactly what the printing press would do. They printed anyway. The question is whether America is different, or whether the press always wins.